Okay, let's go. Episode 2, The Business of E-commerce, and we are back with Dale today. So today we're going to talk about the 95/5 rule. It was like a very interesting concept that I learned, and the first time I came across it, it was like very eye-opening. So in your target market, about 95% of the people who are in your target market are not ready to buy today. Only 5% are ready to buy today. So Dale, let's just talk more about it today.
Yeah. So, a- in a lot of ways, the core concept is pretty straightforward. Not everybody is always in market to buy all the time. Which seems like an obvious statement. If I just got a haircut yesterday, I'm not ready. I'm not in market to buy a haircut today. If I just bought a car last week, I'm probably not interested in whatever you're offering in terms of a car. Um, if I just bought if I just replaced my refrigerator last month, I'm probably not going to be interested in buying another refrigerator this month. So, so what the 95/5 rule does is it basically just um, takes this basic concept that not everyone is ready to buy today and gives you a way to come up with a very specific estimate of what fraction of your market is in market at any given time, and it's going to be different for different products. So for instance, if you look at something like refrigerators, um, the market in the U.S. for replacing a refrigerator is they get replaced on average once every 11 years. So very, very long, what's called
Hmm.
interpurchase period. The decision window is very narrow. It's typically 5 to 10 days, because basically, if your refrigerator dies, you know you're not going to go 3 months without a refrigerator. You're going to get another one pretty quickly, and you're going to get it delivered. So that's an example of something where only less than a percent of the market, so it's maybe about 0.1% of the market for a new refrigerator is in market at any given
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
If you look at something like cars, in the US, on average, people buy a new car about every 4 to 5 years. Um,
Hmm.
and they will take typically about 90 days or so, 60 to 90 days to be able to make a decision on a new car. Um, and it turns out that if you run those numbers, that's going to come out to around 5, 6%, maybe 7% of the market is in market in a given time.
Hmm.
So what you see is in product after product for both consumer products and business products that a relatively small single digit percentage of the market is ready to buy at any point in time. And
Yeah.
that has huge implications on how you think about finding customers and how you think about advertising and messaging those customers.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept, right? So I think for a lot of people when they think about like marketing and advertising, they think about, okay, I ran an ad and then I need to immediately see the results for it. So for example, like particularly if it's like coming from, if you listen to how maybe some sales teams would like, they always want to give away like a discount coupon, like create the urgency, like sign up today and convert. But looks like based on this model, the urgency is sometimes pointless because, like in your haircut example, if I just had a haircut yesterday, you gave me a discount code today, it's for me to act on it tomorrow. It's kind of pointless because I'm not going to go get a haircut 2 days later, right? So so the first time when I came across this concept, that was a very interesting piece of this because it kind of separates out the short-term performance marketing where yes, you can give out discount codes and coupons and tie it back versus the longer term brand building, particularly for things like cars or refrigerator example that you had. So yeah.
And a lot of times what we see is that the longer it is between purchases, for buying cars or we're buying a new house, that sort of thing, the longer the consideration period is, meaning how long it is between when they
Right.
decide I'm going to buy another house or I'm going to buy a car and I actually make the purchase. Low consideration goods like, you know, a lot of the FMCG goods. So if I'm out of butter or if I'm out of cornflakes, my decision window is going to be pretty quick. It's basically, it, is often going to happen when I'm in the grocery store in front of the shelf.
Hmm.
Um, so different products have different interpurchase periods. So the length of time between purchases, and they'll have different decision windows. And the key thing here is that if you're putting out a piece of marketing, um, and that marketing piece is solely focused on driving them to your website to make a purchase. Um, that means that only a very small percentage of the people who you have now paid to see your ad are are going to be even capable of executing on it. Because
Hmm.
again, if I just got a haircut yesterday and you run an ad for 20% off haircuts this week, um, it's not gonna have any impact on me because I'm not in the market. I don't have a need,
Yeah.
and there's nothing you can offer that's gonna suddenly make me buy a new house if I just bought a house last week, or a new car if I just bought a car last week,
Yeah.
or, you know you know, more packages of toilet paper if I have, 16 rolls of toilet paper sitting in the pantry. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
uh and again, you can shift things some. For instance, discounting, especially for consumer goods, discounting will give you a bump. But the other
Hmm.
thing to keep in mind, and I think the 95/5 rule uh, is important in terms of thinking around discounting. You know, if the store is running 50% off on toilet paper, you could be compelled to buy an extra few packages of toilet paper. But it doesn't mean you're gonna suddenly be doubling up the amount of toilet paper you use. Your
Hmm.
usage remains the same. It just means that it's gonna be twice as long before you buy
You
any
just
again.
pulled ahead that demand.
Yeah,
So
and
that's, yeah.
so what you've done is you've taken future demand and you clawed it into the present, but you're
Yeah.
gonna pay for that by having less future demand down the road.
Yeah.
And, we see this a lot with short-term discounting, uh, mechanisms, again, especially around consumer products.
Yeah.
And there's actually a good example of this where in the US, there's a very, very long term. I mean, this pattern goes back 50 or 60 years. There's a very long term pattern around the rate at which people buy new mattresses.
Hmm.
Um, but during the pandemic, there was, because of the lockdowns and everything, there was this sudden interest in upgrading your mattress. And a number of mattress companies did quite well because they were able to tap into that demand. But the problem was that what that demand effectively ended up doing was clawing future demand into the present. Now, again,
Hmm.
this wasn't a result of a price discount, it was a result of a completely external event, the
Yeah.
pandemic. But what you saw in terms of mattress sales was that once the pandemic was over with, you saw this drop for almost 2 years in mattress sales that
Hmm.
didn't start to come back, and that drop in mattress sales almost exactly matched the increase
The increase.
above the
Yeah.
historical baseline.
Hmm.
So, so it's very difficult to sell things to people who don't have a need. Even if you can
Yeah.
convince them to buy something today, you're you know if this doesn't align with their underlying, the underlying rate at which they have a new need,
Yeah.
all you're doing is you're borrowing from the future.
Yeah. I think that opens up this other idea of like demand creation, which probably we should dedicate an entire episode for that. But going back to this, right? I think this introduces, there are like two problems I can think of that this whole idea of 95/5 introduces. Let's say, like in your refrigerator example, the car example, it's going to take them like, let's say, 5 years or 7 years to, that's the inter purchase period. Like people are only buying every 5 or 7 years, right? But then there is a 0 day consideration set, which means that when I'm ready to buy my car or when I'm ready to buy my refrigerator, I'm going to think about a brand because whatever is in my head, those are the brands that I'm going to think about. Which means that, okay, you need to be in my 0 day consideration set. Otherwise, I'm not even going to look at you, right? Now, which means that, okay, you got to keep advertising to me or keep giving me or keep your brand in front of me for that longer period, for the long period without actually getting a purchase off of it. So the whole return for that advertising, when do we track it? And then when you are, if you're the CEO or like the CFO of a company or the business owner, you're looking at, okay, man, I'm just spending so much money for such a long period and I'm not seeing the corresponding bump. So how do you reconcile that? I mean, does it mean that, okay, in those examples, I need to wait for that the math doesn't quite work that way, right? Do I need to wait for 5 years to see the results or no? Because I guess like that 5% is like a rotating, it's a revolving thing. Like there
Right.
are new people coming into that 5%. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so you can think of it as almost like a pipeline where people are
Mhm.
coming, a single individual has not been in market for a long time, but now they
Right.
come in market. And again, a good way to think about it is cereal. So,
Mhm.
I've got a box of cereal on the shelf. I don't need another box.
Mhm.
But at some point, I pour the last bowl of cereal out of that box, and now, I'm gonna write down buy more cereal on the shopping list for the next time I go to the grocery store.
Mhm.
So, but I may have gone to the grocery store, half a dozen times and never even walked down the cereal aisle because I still have a box of cereal. And what triggers that purchase is essentially the empty cereal box,
Mhm.
not your marketing.
Right.
But what your marketing can do is it can cause them to remember you and to recognize you when they do come in market. So, um, if they've never heard of your cereal and they walk down the cereal aisle, they likely will never even see it. And in the
Mhm.
same way, if you've got, an e-commerce shop and you're relying, for instance, heavily on, say, Facebook ads or something like Google ads, you have to you know, you have to either catch the person at that magic moment where they have a need, but they haven't already committed to another supplier, another vendor, or you have to be able to catch them when they don't have a need, but in a way where they will remember you when they do.
Mhm.
And I think this is a key point is that an ad that's engineered to drive action is extremely different than an ad that's engineered to drive memory formation.
Mhm.
And, so what you have to recognize is that, if your ad is, buy now, buy now, buy now, here's a coupon, you basically are only talking to about 5% of the people who are seeing the ad or
Mhm.
5% of the market. I mean, quite frankly, most of
Yeah.
most of the people seeing your ad aren't even in market, aren't even in your market. But even of the ones that might buy it in the future, only about 5% are gonna respond to that. If your ad is engineered to be able to help them form a memory, then, uh, then you're able to move the market, move these buying decisions, uh, or I'm sorry, influence these buying decisions. You're able to
Mhm.
influence buying decisions in a way that will ultimately result in them at least considering you when they do come in market. And
Okay.
a good example of this is if you watch ads on TV for car insurance. Uh, People tend to be very, very slow in changing car insurance providers.
Mhm.
Um, and it's in the US, it's around 5 to 7 years typically that you'll stick, and in some cases, decades that you'll stick with the same insurance provider. So the really successful insurance companies that have grown over time know that they're not going to get any traction by giving you a special discount today or a special offer today. What they're going to do is they're going to grow over time by showing you ads that will let you remember them when you do need car insurance. And you see
Mhm.
that it's like the Geico Gecko,
Mhm.
or Flow with Progressive, or the Aflac Duck. uh,
Mhm.
so you tend to have these things that are very catchy, memorable, uh, sort of personas in the ad that are geared not to make you take action today, but to make you remember who they are, so that when you do have a need, you'll be the first person to come to mind. And
Okay.
the thing to keep in mind is that if I wake up today and I decide I need a new toaster or I need a new pair of shoes, the very first search engine I'm gonna go to is gonna be my own memories.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna search my own brain for who did I buy shoes from last time? Who do
Yeah.
I, whose shoes do I like? I'm likely gonna go there first. I'm not gonna go scouting on Facebook looking for your buy now ad.
Hmm.
And I'm not even gonna go to Google unless I already remember, unless nothing comes to mind when I'm trying to search my own memories.
Yeah.
And so this is the importance of balancing between ads that get people to come to your site and purchase immediately versus ads that are engineered to get people to remember who you are so that you come to mind and you're now in their consideration set at some future point when they're ready to buy. And
How do you, yeah, how do you find that balance, right? Let's say I'm a Shopify merchant and I have a very limited amount of dollars that I'm dedicating to all my marketing efforts. So how do you decide the split between like performance marketing of, okay, I need to convert this immediately versus like, okay, it's brand awareness. Is there a heuristic there that I can use, or it
I,
seems like a very
so there's
complicated
relatively
mix?
little data on this. The best
Mhm.
data is from a long running study that's done by a guy named Les Binet and Peter Fields
Mhm.
out of the UK. And a lot of their stuff is actually around consumer goods. And what they show is that the companies that have the best long-term performance will roughly split their advertising budget in half. Do about half
Mhm.
that's focused on brand building and forming memories, and about half that are focused on driving immediate action.
Okay.
Because again, the immediate action, even though it's hitting a small fraction of the market, means, if you can find those people, it means immediate revenue.
Right.
But the long term, being able to hit the other 95% and influence their future buying decision means that in the future you're going to have to work less hard to convince them to come and buy.
Mhm.
And so one of the net effects there is that if someone sees your ad and and they have a need today and they already recognize you, they're much more likely to click on that ad than if they've never heard of you before.
Okay.
And we see this, for instance, with a lot of I mean, I think Temu is a good example. The only way that Temu can sell stuff is to do insanely low discounts.
Mhm.
To be, so absurdly cheap that that someone will take a shot on them, even
Mhm.
though most of the merchandise they're selling are brands that no one's ever heard of because they're brands that come out of China that really don't have any kind of a presence in the US.
Mhm.
And so, you're either going to pay for it by having to discount, or you're going to pay for it in terms of having lower performing direct response ads.
Okay.
Uh, and so you're going to pay one way or the other. Uh,
So in
as a
that
rule,
example, right, it looks like majority of their advertising is, I mean, the brand is now very well known. Like Temu as a brand, everyone knows that it's associated with finding things that are very low priced, right? And maybe they're not as durable, but that's the market, the customer base knows exactly what that is. Um, so, but but it looks like the answer is like 50-50 is a rough split. You need to spend 50% on your brand awareness building and 50% on short-term returns,
well,
right? Like
and the other
performance.
thing is you can you can do ads that have dual duty.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges with a really, kind of hard hitting buy now ad is that those ads that are intended to drive a behavior are almost always designed in such a way that they perform very poorly in terms of forming memories. And there are very, very good research on this. Ads that are good at forming memories tend to also be quite good at driving action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, um, so you don't have to. It's not an either or. Um, and even if you're doing a buy now immediately ad, you probably should still think very deeply about how you put the creative together in such a way that you're going to maximize the ability to form a memory. Because what
Mm-hmm.
you want is for the person looking at the ad to be able to make an association between your key branding elements, so name,
Hmm.
logo, tagline, maybe a single point of differentiation,
Yeah.
to make an association between those key branding elements and your product category.
Hmm.
And again, you see this with association studies. So if you say shoes, a lot of people are going to say Nike.
Hmm.
If you say phone, a lot of people are going to say Apple.
Hmm.
Um, so there are, these are good examples of how, simply saying the category will immediately bring up the brand association.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that reminds me. I think there's this other very interesting concept of which, since you're creating the memory, you want the brand elements to kind of remain the same, right? So over time, if you look at like the Coca-Cola example, the brand elements have remained mostly the same for like 100 plus years, right? Because if your idea is that, okay, for any brand, and I bring this up because I know recently everyone is talking about the Jaguar brand refresh, and that's like a completely different, there's a lot of other stuff around that. But if your goal is like someone's buying only in a very long period of time, you have to remind them of the brand and the brand elements and the color scheme and everything, right? So that's part of your advertising in terms of building the memory around your brand.
right. And again, you look at, you go back 25 years ago with Geico.
Hmm.
So Geico is, I don't even remember, it's an acronym. Um,
Yeah.
and, and for whatever reason, the company didn't feel like they could change the name of the company.
Hmm.
But what they were faced with was, this is a very hard word to remember by itself.
Yeah.
And their stroke of brilliance was Geico Gecko. So the
Hmm.
closest word that has an image, the closest sort of standard word in English to this made up acronym Geico is the word gecko.
Hmm.
Gecko has a very specific visual image associated with it.
Hmm.
And so, uh, so they end up having a mascot in the form of a lizard.
Hmm.
It's a gecko, and and what they're trying to do is to help you make that Geico Gecko connection
Hmm.
visually and auditorially. Um, and so these are the things you have to think about: is how do you make it easy for someone to remember you? So
Hmm.
the first thing is, you know, have kind of easy to recall or easy to remember imagery and symbols and words. But the other thing is to remain consistent. So again, you look at the
Hmm.
Geico Gecko thing, their core branding has not changed in a quarter of a century.
Hmm.
And they are hugely successful with it. So you don't need to just continue to fiddle with your brand, change the look, refresh things, because what you're doing is, and again, part of why everybody instantly knows what I'm talking about when I say Geico Gecko is because we've seen it.
Hmm.
And even if it doesn't immediately come to mind, once it's said out loud, people will make that association back to the TV commercial.
Hmm.
And uh, the reason for that is that it is significantly easier to recall a pre-existing memory, even if you've forgotten that memory, than it is to form a brand new memory.
Hmm.
And so, what companies like Geico have understood, especially with consumers that go a long period of time without buying, is that they need to be highly consistent with their branding over a long period of time, because it's going to be very difficult for someone to recall you, or for you to be able to refresh those memories if you keep changing what it is they need to
Right.
remember.
Hmm.
Because again, refreshing a previous memory, even one that's been forgotten, is a significantly lower cognitive load than being able to form a brand new memory from scratch. And
Hmm.
again, this is part of why companies like Coke, their advertising, performs at a significantly higher level than new entrants, because all they're having to do is they keep just
Just
refreshing
refreshing it.
people.
Yeah. Hmm.
Where a new company that has never done any kind of brand work, is now going to have, they're faced with the task of trying to get people to remember something entirely new that's not already in their head.
Hmm.
Well, the problem with refreshing your creative, or even worse, refreshing your branding elements, is that you've essentially wiped out the entire investment that you've made historically in your brand marketing, because you're no longer allowing people who have a prior memory of your brand to be able to lean on that, on the recall of that memory, and you're forcing them to remember something from scratch all over again.
Mm, right. Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's an important, and I see like a lot of like smaller companies rebranding, changing the names all the time. And it's like, okay, that's a huge effort from for all different reasons. And I think this is a very important piece of it, that people remember you for something and then all of a sudden you look very different, you change your name. I think that's difficult. I think we just like keep running out of time so fast in these funds. So we should continue these conversations. Maybe there are so much to like unwrap here then and get deeper into. So I think we're going to stop here today because we are past the time. And just a plug for Ordoro here. So Ordoro is an order management, inventory management platform for Shopify merchants, or like we also work with like WooCommerce, BigCommerce, Amazon, a lot of different merchants. So if you are looking for shipping label creation or managing inventory for your multiple, as you sell across multiple channels, go take it, give us a try. You can find us at ordoro.com. So that's all for today, and we'll see you guys again next week for the next episode of the Business of E-commerce. Bye.
Goodbye.